The email arrived late on a Tuesday, brief and direct, saying that a senior client meeting in Seattle needed 2 people, and the names listed were Ethan Carter and Emily Ross. And when Emily read it, her heart sped up because she had worked under Ethan for 2 years but never traveled with him alone, and the idea felt sudden and heavy at the same time. Ethan was known in the Chicago office as steady and fair, a man who spoke little but meant every word, and Emily respected him because he never took credit for work he did not do and never raised his voice. Yet there was always a quiet distance around him that made people curious. The office buzzed with gossip as soon as the announcement spread. But Emily stayed focused, packing files, checking schedules, telling herself this was just work, even though a small voice inside her kept whispering that something about this trip felt different. The morning of departure came fast, with gray skies and cold air, and Emily reached the airport early, nervous energy keeping her alert. And when she saw Ethan waiting near the gate, calm and organized, she felt oddly relieved, as if his presence made the chaos fade. They greeted each other politely, exchanged updates about the client, and boarded the plane without drama. But once seated, the quiet hum of the cabin made conversation feel closer than it ever had in the office. And Ethan asked about her career goals, not as a boss checking progress, but as someone genuinely interested. And Emily answered honestly, surprising herself with how open she felt. As the plane climbed, she noticed small things, like how he listened without interrupting, and how his smile appeared only when something truly amused him. And she wondered why she had never noticed before. When they landed in Seattle, rain greeted them, soft but constant, and the city felt calm in a way that slowed their steps. And during the ride to the hotel, they reviewed the meeting plan, trading ideas quickly, building off each other with ease, realizing they worked better together than expected. The hotel was smaller than Emily imagined, quiet and clean, and a minor booking issue meant they shared a preparation suite for meetings. Though their rooms were separate, and while it was professional, the thought of spending long hours together made Emily's chest feel tight. They sat across a table that evening, laptops open, papers spread out, moving fast through details, deadlines, and strategies. And time passed without either noticing. And when the lights flickered briefly during a storm, the moment broke their focus, making them laugh softly, easing tension they hadn't known was there. Ethan commented on how travel changed the rhythm of life, how being away from routine made people notice things they usually ignored. And Emily agreed, sensing he was speaking from experience, not theory. When they finally packed up for the night, there was a pause at the door, not awkward but thoughtful, as if both were aware that the trip had already shifted something inside them. Emily returned to her room feeling restless, replaying the day in her mind, realizing this assignment was not just another task, but the start of something she could not yet name. And as rain tapped against the window, she understood that being alone on this trip with her boss was going to test her focus, her feelings, and her sense of balance in ways she had never faced before. Seattle felt different on the second day, quieter and heavier, as if the city itself was watching them. And Emily woke early, already thinking about the presentation, pushing aside the strange emotions from the night before. Because work was the reason she was here, and she refused to forget that. They met in the shared suite just after sunrise, coffee in hand, and without wasting time, they jumped straight into revisions, moving fast, correcting slides, adjusting numbers, speaking in short, clear sentences that showed trust and rhythm. And Emily noticed how naturally they worked together, like a team that had trained for years instead of months. As the hours passed, the outside world faded, rain sliding down the windows while inside the room grew warm with focus and quiet effort. And at one point, Ethan leaned back, studying the screen, then calmly admitted a mistake in his own section, asking Emily for her opinion without pride, and the honesty surprised her, deepening her respect for him in a way that felt personal, not professional. During a short break, they stood by the window, watching traffic crawl through wet streets. And Ethan spoke about how travel made him think about choices he never had time to face at home. How routine could hide questions that waited patiently. In silence, and Emily listened closely, sensing he was not just talking about work or travel, but about life itself. She shared how she often felt torn between ambition and the fear of ending up alone, and the words came out before she could stop. But instead of discomfort, there was relief, and Ethan did not rush to answer. He simply nodded, showing he understood. The conference itself passed quickly, filled with handshakes, polite smiles, focused discussions, and when Emily watched Ethan speak to the clients with calm confidence, she felt proud to be part of his team, realizing that her feelings were growing in a space she had never planned to explore. Once the meetings ended successfully, they walked back to the hotel through light rain, umbrellas brushing, steps matching, and although they talked about schedules and next steps, there was an undercurrent of shared awareness that could not be ignored. Back in the suite, they reviewed final notes for the next day, but the pace slowed. Not from fatigue, but from something else. Something quiet and heavy that neither wanted to name. And when the city lights turned on outside, reflecting softly on the glass, Ethan finally said that the trip felt different from others he had taken. That working so closely had reminded him how rare true understanding was. Emily felt her breath catch, not because of what he said, but because of how gently he said it. And she realized she was standing closer than before, though there was still space between them. As the evening ended, they separated without lingering, each returning to their room, but sleep stayed far away. And Emily lay awake, replaying every look, every pause, understanding that the distance between them had shrunk, not physically, but emotionally, and that the second day of the trip had taken them beyond simple teamwork into a place where feelings were forming quietly, waiting for a moment that might never come, yet already changing everything. The final evening arrived sooner than either of them expected. And after a long day of follow-up meetings and quiet approvals, the pressure that had driven them forward suddenly eased, leaving space that felt unfamiliar and risky. And when Ethan suggested a short walk near the waterfront to clear his head, Emily agreed without hesitation, knowing she needed air as much as distance from her own thoughts. The city had changed after sunset, lights stretching across the water, the rain reduced to a soft mist, and as they walked side by side, their steps steady and close, conversation moved quickly from work to memories. Then two things neither usually shared, and Ethan spoke about his past with careful honesty, explaining how his marriage had ended, not in anger, but in silence. Two people growing apart while pretending nothing was wrong. And Emily listened, realizing this calm man carried a weight he never showed at the office. She responded without planning to, admitting how she often felt unseen in crowded rooms. Success did not always quiet the loneliness that followed her home. And once the words were out, they felt true and freeing. They stopped near the railing, the water dark and calm below them. And the space between them grew charged, not with action, but with awareness. And Ethan said quietly that this trip had reminded him how easy it was to feel understood when walls were lowered, and Emily knew he was speaking about her, even though he never said her name. She answered honestly, saying that some connections appeared unexpectedly and tested a person's sense of right and wrong, and the moments stretched, fragile and intense, but neither crossed the invisible line they both respected. Instead, they stood there sharing the silence, understanding that what they felt mattered precisely because it could not be rushed or taken lightly. When they returned to the hotel, the halls felt too quiet, and back in the suite, they reviewed final documents out of habit, though their focus drifted. And Ethan admitted that pretending nothing had changed would be difficult, but acting on impulse would be worse, and Emily agreed, feeling both relief and sadness at his words. She realized then that respect was the reason the moment felt meaningful. It's not frustrating, and that restraint did not erase feeling. it sharpened it. As they packed up, the air felt heavy, and at the door Ethan paused, meeting her eyes with a look that held gratitude, regret, and something softer beneath it. And he thanked her for trusting him with her honesty, saying it had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him that way. Emily answered that the trust went both ways, and for a brief second it felt like the world narrowed to that quiet hallway, but then reality returned, steady and unavoidable. Alone in her room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing, understanding that what had happened was not a mistake but a moment of truth. And she wondered how something so restrained could feel so powerful. Sleep came late, filled with half-formed thoughts and unanswered questions, and she knew that the next day would take them back to their roles. But the third night of the trip had already marked a turning point, one where feelings were acknowledged, without being claimed, leaving both of them changed in ways that could not be undone. The morning of departure came quietly, with soft rain still falling over Seattle, and as Emily packed her bags, she felt a strange mix of relief and heaviness, knowing that the trip was ending but that the time they had shared had left something unspoken between them that neither could ignore. At breakfast, Ethan was calm, professional, joking lightly about a small conference mishap, and Emily smiled along, hiding the storm of thoughts in her mind, because neither wanted to disturb the fragile balance they had found. The drive to the airport was silent, filled with routine instructions and navigation directions. Yet every glance toward each other carried memory and meaning that no words could capture. And Emily realized that while they would return to the office as colleagues, something fundamental had shifted. On the flight, seats side by side, laptops closed, Emily stared out at the clouds, replaying the moments of honesty, laughter, and quiet confessions they had shared. And she understood that those hours together had built a connection that would influence every interaction afterward. Ethan reached over briefly to adjust a small item she had dropped, a casual gesture. But it lingered in Emily's mind far longer than intended, a symbol of closeness that could not be named. When they landed in Chicago, the familiar noise of the airport and the city outside felt almost overwhelming, like stepping back into a life that had suddenly become smaller compared to the openness they had experienced on the trip. And as they retrieved luggage and waited for a taxi, they spoke only in necessary sentences, yet even those carried weight. Back at the office, their routines resumed immediately. Meetings stacked on top of each other, emails pouring in, deadlines pressing, and colleagues moved around them, oblivious to the subtle shift in energy. But Emily noticed how Ethan's presence seemed warmer, not less professional, just slightly different, and she recognized the same in herself. She worked through reports, presentations, and schedules. But a quiet awareness lingered, a reminder of the conversations on the waterfront, the shared silences, and the truth they had both faced together. They never spoke of the trip directly. No references or jokes, only a shared glance in a meeting, a smile in the hallway, but the memory hung between them, unspoken yet undeniable, shaping how they interacted and deepening mutual respect. Emily found herself stronger, clearer about her ambitions and feelings. And she understood that some experiences did not need action to have meaning. That connection itself could be enough to change perspective, to leave a lasting impression, without demanding a response. The days following the trip passed normally, yet every small interaction felt slightly charged. Subtle gestures and casual comments carrying hidden significance, and Emily realized that their brief time alone had altered the way she saw not only Ethan but herself, revealing patience, honesty, and emotional depth she had not fully acknowledged before. By the end of the week, everything in the office appeared unchanged on the surface. Yet inside, Emily felt a quiet transformation, a calm confidence paired with the memory of moments she could never repeat but would always carry, and she understood that while life would continue, that trip had given her something permanent. A sense of clarity, a recognition of what honesty and respect could create. and the knowledge that some connections once made never truly fade. As she left work that Friday, the city bustling around her, Emily smiled softly, knowing that while the trip was over, its impact would remain, shaping her interactions, choices, and perspective in ways both subtle and profound, a silent reminder that even brief moments of understanding and shared emotion could leave a mark on a lifetime.